There was a time when Mrs. Peace Madu was one of the most hardworking and respected women in her neighborhood. A widow in her early 30s, known for her determination, resilience, and generosity. After losing her husband in a tragic road accident, she had refused to let grief consume her. Instead, she channeled her energy into building a small food business from scratch, and it flourished. Her food stand, modestly located near the bus park in Enugu, quickly became the go-to spot for drivers, civil servants, market women and students. Her spicy goat meat pepper soup, fried yam and jollof rice were legendary. Her daughter Chidima, who was just 4 when her father passed away, would often sit by the stand, helping her mother and greeting customers with a smile. Peace was not just surviving, she was thriving. She saved diligently, upgraded her store into a proper wooden kiosk, and registered her food business as Chidi Sports. Within 3 years, she has saved enough to purchase a second-hand tricycle, which she hired out for daily income. She paid her daughter's school fees without assistance and even donated food weekly to a nearby orphanage. She often told her daughter, "When you give during your time of abundance, you won't be stranded during your time of lack." But life had other plans. One hot, dry and windy day, Mrs. Peace left her shop to the market to purchase a bag of rice and some fresh vegetables. She asked her assistant to keep an eye on the cooking pots and serve customers in her absence. What happened next remained a mystery. Some said it was a leaking gas cylinder. Others said it was the overheated generator, but before anyone could make sense out of it, flames erupted and spread rapidly across the shop. By the time Mrs. Peace returned, it was too late. Her entire kiosk, her source of livelihood, had been reduced to ashes. Her cooking utensils and cash box were gone. I mean, completely gone. She dropped to her knees and screamed. The smell of smoke, the sound of onlookers gasping, and the sight of her life's work burning before her very eyes became a wound she wasn't sure would heal. Wasil, the young man managing her tricycle, absconded with it the next day. The weeks that followed were cruel. Mrs. Peace tried to stay strong, but life kept giving her harsh blows. She knocked on doors for cleaning jobs, house chores, and even nanny work, but was turned away repeatedly. Some looked at her with pity. Others didn't even bother to answer. Her daughter Chidima had to drop from school because the school fees were no longer affordable. Their meals became irregular. On some days, they drank garri with salt and pretended it was rice from a wedding. On other days, they simply slept through hunger. But no matter how bad things got, Mrs. Peace never lost her faith. Every night, she would lay her hand on Chidima's head and whisper, "One day, help will come. I don't know how or when, but it will come." One day, the morning sun had barely risen when Mrs. Peace stepped out of her small room carrying an empty bowl she hoped to fill with something. Just anything from only God knows where for breakfast. Her daughter Chidima stayed still inside, curled up on the bed with one arm over her stomach, apparently very hungry. Mrs. Peace stood outside. She was lost in thought of which direction to follow. She overheard the faint chatter of 2 women approaching. She quickly recognized them as her neighbors. One of them, a woman named Ijoma, had recently started looking slightly fresh, despite having no known source of income. "I tell you, if you see what I picked yesterday, Ijoma said, laughing as she adjusted the scarf on her head. "Fried rice with vegetables, so the kind you only see at weddings, and it was still warm." The second woman, Ngozi, gasped. "From where?" Ijoma lowered her voice, looking around. "So you haven't heard? It's from Eagle's Nest Estate now." Mrs. Peace shifted slightly, pretending to wipe the bench beside her, but her ears were fully alert. Ijoma continued, "My sister, let me shock you. Those rich people inside that estate throw away more food in one day than some families eat in a week. I am not talking about scraps, so I mean complete meals. You will see containers of untouched food dumped right inside the bins like it's nothing." Ngozi raised an eyebrow, stunned. people go there to pick it? Yes now, Ijoma replied. There is a dustbin spot near their gates where the estate cleaners empty food waste from all the homes. Poor women like us have started going there with flasks and bowls. You just wait for the cleaner to offload the bins and you rush and take what is still clean. Sometimes you even meet fruits still in their plastic wraps. Mrs. Peace froze. She stared at the road ahead, but her mind had already wandered far. A dustbin with balanced meals? Her stomach turned at the thought, not just from hunger, but from disbelief. She had spent months praying for a breakthrough, watching her child go to bed hungry, eating dry garri like a snack, and all this time, just a few streets away, people were throwing away more food that she had cooked in the past 6 months. The weight of the revelation pressed hard on her chest. To her, these were not leftovers, they were lavish meals dumped like they meant nothing. Rice that she had never even seen or touched for a long while, being thrown away while she and her daughter were starving to death. She could hardly breathe. Her pride fought against her need. She had once fed people. She had once donated food to orphanages and offered plates to strangers. How could she now go to a dustbin just to survive? What if someone she knows sees her? Her eyes burned with tears. She couldn't stop. She quietly turned away and walked back into her room. Inside, Chidinma sat up, blinking sleep from her eyes. Mommy, did you bring any food? Mrs. Peace forced a smile and said gently, Not yet, my love, but I heard something today and I am thinking about it. Mommy, I am very hungry. Whatever you have heard should better be connected to food, please. That night, Mrs. Peace sat in the dark. The wind howled softly outside, but her mind was louder than any noise. Could she really go to a place where people set bins for food? Would it be wrong or wise? She looked at Chidinma, already fast asleep, looking malnourished. She whispered to herself, Lord, if this is the path that leads us to our help, give me the courage to walk it. And with that, she made a silent decision. Tomorrow, I will go and see this place for myself. The next morning, it was barely 7 a.m. She gently tapped her daughter awake. Chidinma, stand up, let's go. The little girl sat up slowly, rubbing her tired eyes. To school? She asked with a hopeful smile. Mrs. Peace forced a smile and replied, Not yet, my love, but very soon. Today, we are going somewhere else. Chidinma nodded without protest. Outside their home was already alive with motion. School bells rang in the distance. Well-dressed children rushed past them in polished shoes and freshly ironed uniforms. Their lunch boxes jingled with joy as school buses honked and parents shouted last-minute instructions. But Chidinma had none of that. No uniform, no bag, no lunch box. Just her mother holding her hand and a small plastic container tucked inside a black nylon bag. They walked quietly through the estate service entrance and found themselves in a clean, quiet street lined with tall fences and shiny gates. The houses were majestic with trimmed lawns and sleek cars parked neatly in driveways. To Chidinma, it looked like the kind of place Cinderella might live. They approached a house with a new green waste bin placed just outside the gates. It was clean, freshly rolled out and full, a sign that the morning cleaners hadn't yet arrived. Without a word, Mrs. Peace bent down and carefully opened the lid. The smell hit her first, a strange mix of bleach, fruits and food. She pulled her wrapper tighter and began to sort through the top layer with a stick, trying not to cry. Not from shame, but from helplessness. Chidinma stood beside her, holding the container and watching quietly. Suddenly, a black Prado jeep rolled out of the compound. The tires crashed softly against the interlocked pavement as they approached the gates. Inside the car was a man in a crepe suit. Seated behind him was a girl of about 10, dressed neatly in her school uniform and her hair neatly packed into ponytails. The man barely glanced in their direction. He waited for the gate to open, checked his watch and drove forward, focused on getting his daughter to school in time. But the little girl in the car saw everything. She saw Chidima standing holding an empty container with hope. She saw Mrs. Peace bent over the bin, her hands trembling slightly as she picked through the cabbage with a stick. She saw the hunger, the shame and the quiet desperation. Her face fell. She wanted to say something. She turned slightly to her father, opened her mouth but stopped. She looked back at the two strangers with concern as the car pulled away. Just as the car disappeared around the corner, Mrs. Peace gasped softly and leaned in. There it was, a takeaway pack of jollof rice seated almost neatly inside a transparent nylon. It looked untouched. The rice was still in shape, not surging, not clumped together. The color was bright and a piece of meat sat gently in the corner. She picked it up with care, sniffed it cautiously. There was a smell of not yet bad and definitely not fresh that oozed from the nylon. She opened it properly and examined it again. It's in between, she said to herself. Not spoilt, but not fresh either. She looked at Chidima. It's okay, mommy. I am hungry, the little girl whispered. Even if it's not sweet, I will eat it. One would have thought that they would go home to warm it, but who will give them money for kerosene or gas? And just like that, they sat quietly beside the dustbin, a mother and a child sharing a pack of jollof rice that was halfway to spoiling. The taste didn't matter. The shame didn't matter. The only thing that mattered at that time was that their stomachs wasn't groaning that morning. Far down the road, the girl in the black jeep kept glancing out of the window as if searching for something. She couldn't explain it, but her heart felt heavy. For the first time, she realized that while her lunchbox was packed with fried rice and juice, some people were eating from her bin. She didn't have the words to express it yet, but the seed of compassion had been planted. The next day, Mrs. Peace rose early, gently waking Chidima, who hadn't slept well. She had developed a slight cough, but she never complained. She just wrapped her thin arms around her mother's waist and said softly, Mommy, maybe we'll be lucky again today. Let's go back there. Mrs. Peace smiled faintly, kissed her forehead and packed the same black nylon bag with their container. It became a routine. They avoided the main road just because of too many familiar faces. Instead, they took the narrow path behind the estate, quietly making their way to the corner where the green dustbin sat near the gate. The same house, the same dustbin, the same early hour. Only that this time, someone was watching more closely. From the upstairs window of the house, Zara, the 10-year-old girl, dressed in her school uniform, stood silently, patting the curtain just slightly. She had seen them again, the same mother and daughter from yesterday, with the same quiet eyes and the same hunger. She stood for a moment. Then she turned quickly and ran downstairs with her school bag. As she got down, her father was already waiting in the car. He was reading emails on his phone and barely looked up when she climbed in. She stared at the dustbin corner again. The mother was already leaning into it, carefully sorting through the top with a stick. Zara's heart clenched. She had seen stray dogs sniffing bins before. She had seen street children begging at traffic lights, but this felt different. They were clean. They were calm. They weren't fighting or snatching, and they weren't sick or mad. They weren't even shouting or drawing attention. They were just there, quietly searching, like people who had once lived normal lives, but something terribly went wrong. Zara blinked hard and shifted in her seat, trying to swallow the lump rising in her throat. She turned to her father and asked, Daddy, why do they keep coming here? Her father, still looking at his phone, replied without emotion. Zara, don't concern yourself with things like this. Some people just make bad choices in life. Don't look too closely. Zara frowned. But what if it wasn't a choice? Her father didn't answer. The gate rolled open and the car moved out. As they drove past, Zara looked one last time at the woman and the child by the bin. And just then, Mrs. Peace looked up. Their eyes met for the briefest moment. That morning, the pickings were slim. But just as Mrs. Peace was about to give up and walk away, she noticed something tucked beside a tied black bag. She reached for it, unwrapped it slowly, and there it was. Spaghetti in a generous portion, slightly oily with a slice of fried plantain resting on top. But as she leaned closer and sniffed, her heart sank. The spaghetti was beginning to sour. It wasn't completely bad, but it wasn't fresh either. Somewhere in between. The kind of meal you will never eat even though you were offered money. She turned to Chidima. It might not taste good though. Do you still want it? Chidima took the pack, opened it gently and picked up a small spoonful. She tasted it, swallowed quickly, then nodded. I will eat it. Mommy, it is better than nothing. So they sat there on the edge of the pavement, mother and daughter sharing a box of spaghetti that no longer had value to anyone else but to them. It was breakfast, lunch, and perhaps even dinner. And just around the corner, from inside the black Prado Jeep, Zara kept looking back, her small hand resting on the window. Her father didn't notice, but she did, and her heart would not rest. That night, Zara lay in bed, but her mind wasn't still. She couldn't shake the image of the woman and her little girl sitting by the bin eating sour rice, sour spaghetti, or whatever it is without flinching. Not because they enjoyed it, but because it was all they had access to. Her chest felt tight and something inside her told her, tomorrow, you have to do more than look. She knew she couldn't ask her father because he wouldn't understand, and her mother was always busy, so she came up with a plan. The next morning, she walked slowly into her parents' room, wrapped in a blanket and her eyes dropping. Mommy, I don't feel well, she whispered. Her mother touched her forehead. No fever, but she was pale and her voice shaky. Her father was in a rush and he said, she's probably just tired. Let her stay back and rest. I will call the school. Zara was beyond happy. Within minutes, they were out of the door rushing to beat traffic, and the moment the gate clicked shut, Zara jumped up. She dropped the blankets, changed into her casual clothes and packed a full meal into her lunchbox. Fried rice, grilled chicken, a juice box and a small bag of oranges. There she stood near the gate and waited. Right on time, Mrs. Peace and Chidima appeared at the corner of the street, walking slowly, holding the same black nylon. They were clearly trying to be invisible, but Zara stepped out and called gently. Excuse me, madam. Mrs. Peace froze. She looked up and immediately recognized the girl, the one from the black jeep. Her heart skipped. Had they finally crossed the line? Would someone report them? Zara walked closer. You don't have to go to the bin today, she said softly. Please come with me. Confused, cautious but desperate, Mrs. Peace followed. Chidima clung to her mother's wrapper as they stepped through the open gates and into the elegant house. Inside, Zara opened the lunchbox and offered them the meal without a food. Chidima's eyes widened. Her mother hesitated. It's okay, Zara said gently. I packed it myself, it is clean. Mrs. Peace's lips trembled. Thank you, my child. Thank you. They sat and ate, slowly at first, then with more comfort. The rice was warm. the chicken soft and the juice cold. Then Zara asked the question that had been burning in her heart. Why do you come here every day? You don't look like people who should be picking from a dustbin. Mrs. Peace looked at her. For the first time in many months, someone wasn't asking with judgment. There was no mockery in the child's voice, only concern. And so she told her everything. My name is Mrs. Peace, madam, she began, her voice low but clear. I wasn't always like this. I used to have a small restaurant by the bus stop. I cooked food. From there I made enough to survive that I even gave to others. One day, a fire broke out. I lost everything. Everything I built for 7 years burned in less than 20 minutes. I had no savings left. The tricycle I invested in was stolen. I begged for jobs. I knocked on doors. No one wanted to hire a widow with a child. She paused to breathe, her eyes misty. My daughter stopped going to school. We started skipping meals. Sometimes we don't eat for 2 days. Then one day, someone mentioned that your estate beans had untouched foods. I didn't believe it at first too, but hunger pushed me here. I told myself I would do it just once, but the next day I came back. Chidima leaned against her mother's shoulder and added, Mommy always says, help will come. She just doesn't know when. Zara couldn't stop the tears that filled her eyes. She reached for Chidima's hand and held it tight. I think maybe that help is today. She sat quietly beside them as she watched them finish their food, but something inside her was breaking. She looked at Chidima, her dress faded, her sandals worn down to the heel. Yet, the little girl smiled and said thank you with so much grace. You would think she had been given a palace. She couldn't take it anymore, and then she burst into tears because she just understood how unfair the world could be. I am sorry, she whispered, wiping her face. I am so sorry you have to go through this. It's not fair and it's not right. Mrs. Peace reached out instinctively to comfort her. No, my darling, please don't cry. You have already done more than enough. You have shown us kindness. That's more than most people ever do. But Sarah shook her head. It's not enough. She stood up, wiped her face again and ran inside the house. Moments later, she returned, dragging a bag of foodstuffs from the pantry. A small sack of rice, spaghetti, tomato paste, a carton of noodles, a pack of biscuits and a bottle of vegetable oil. She dropped it in front of Mrs. Peace and said, Please, ma, take all of these. But Mrs. Peace stood and gently pushed the bag. No, she said, her voice calm but firm. This is your family's food. I appreciate your heart, but it wouldn't be right. We have already eaten this morning and that's enough. But Zara wanted to insist, but she interrupted her. No, darling. I may be poor, but I'm not greedy. I believe in dignity. Let me earn the rest when I can. Zara didn't argue. Instead, she wiped her face again and said, Then let me at least know where you live. She picked up a small notepad and asked Mrs. Peace to write down her address. And with that, she hugged Chidima tightly and promised to see her again very soon. That evening, when her parents returned home, they were surprised to find their daughter sitting quietly on the staircase. Sarah, you didn't eat the lunch I left for you, her mother asked. Sarah shook her head. Her father frowned. Why? What's wrong? Are you still feeling sick? Zara looked up at both of them and said slowly, How can I eat when someone out there can't even afford ordinary biscuits, not to talk of a decent meal? There was silence. Her mother exchanged a worried glance with her husband. What are you talking about? Sarah stood up, her eyes wet again but determined. I lied about being sick. I stayed home because I wanted to help the woman who comes to our dustbin every morning. Her name is Mrs. Peace. She lost her business in fire. Her daughter hasn't been to school in months. They come to our house to look for leftovers so they won't starve. And today I brought them in. I fed them. I heard their story and now I can't eat unless you help me help them. Her parents were stunned. Mr. Igwe blinked. Sarah! But she raised her hand, small but strong. If you want me to eat, if you want me to sleep, if you want me to go back to school and be fine again, then please take the foodstuffs I packed and deliver them to their house and enroll their daughter in my school. What's the point of everything we have if we close our eyes to those who have nothing? But her parents ignored her. For the rest of that day, Zara said nothing. She didn't argue. She didn't plead and she didn't throw tantrums. She simply refused to eat. The next morning when her mother came to wake her up for school, she pulled the covers over herself. I am not going, she said flatly, not until you help Mrs. Peace at Chidima. Sarah, stop all this, her father said frustrated. You don't skip school because of strangers. Zara quietly replied, they are no strangers anymore. They are now my friends. Her parents tried to act like everything was normal. They packed her lunch, ironed her uniform, even left her school bag by the door, but Zara stayed in bed all day. She didn't eat, she didn't come out, and she didn't even touch her juice balls. By evening, her lips were dry and her eyes sunken, but her voice was still firm. I meant it. You can give them what they need in 2 hours. But if you don't, I will keep going hungry for days. Her mother broke first. She knelt by Zara's bed, tears welling up. You are only 10, my baby. You shouldn't be carrying burdens like this. Zara looked at her, tired but resolute. Then, help me carry it, mommy. That same evening, Mr. and Mrs. Igwe drove out with Zara in the back seat and a double bag of foodstuffs in the trunk. This time, it included more than just rice and noodles. There was soap, tissue, milk, even a small envelope of cash. They pulled up to the address Mrs. Peace had scribbled in shaking handwriting 2 days ago. She stepped out when she heard the car. Chidima ran out barefooted. Zara jumped down first. Mommy, Daddy, they are the ones. Mrs. Peace froze. I didn't expect. Zara's mother smiled. You didn't ask, but we came. Mr. Igwe cleared his throat. We brought you a few things, and if you don't mind, we would like to sponsor your daughter's education. Mrs. Peace gasped. She tried to speak but broke into tears. She knelt down right there, holding Chidima close, sobbing into her shoulder. She had prayed for a breakthrough, but she never imagined it would come through a child. The next morning, for the first time in months, Chidima got dressed in the morning. The car pulled up at the junction just past 7:30 a.m. Chidima was already waiting there. Zara rolled down the window and shouted, Come in, my new best friend, let's go. Chidima ran forward, opened the door and slid in beside her. 4 months later, she was now answering confidently in class and topping her schoolwork. She had grown healthier, rounder in the cheeks and brighter in the spirits. Mrs. Peace too had come alive again. Her eyes, once tired and dim, now carried the glow of a woman finding her footing again. One morning, after school drop-off, Mr. and Mrs. Igwe called her to their house. They sat her down with warm smiles and a rolled-out architectural sketch. We visited your bond shop secretly last week, Mr. Igwe said, and we want to rebuild it better than it was before. Mrs. Peace's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. We also want to give you full startup capital with no strings attached, his wife added. We just felt that you deserve to stand on your feet again. Tears filled Mrs. Peace's eyes, and this time she didn't try to hold them back. She knelt slowly on the floor and whispered, I have no words, just God bless you, and may your children never lack helpers. By the 3rd week of the next month, her new shop was ready. People returned, old and new. She hired new women who were also widows because she knew what it meant to be forgotten. Business started booming again. One Saturday morning, the Igwes were inside the home when they heard a gentle knock. Zara opened the door and called out, Mommy, Daddy, come and see you. Outside stood Mrs. Peace and Chidima, beautifully dressed in matching native attire, carrying trays. Behind them was a local butcher dragging a live goat. Please forgive me for coming unannounced, Mrs. Peace began, her voice shaking with emotion. But in our culture, when people save your life, you don't thank them with just words. You come with tangible things. And today, I have come with this live goat, a basket of fruits, palm oil, fresh fish, and bottles of homemade zobo just to say thank you. They all stood there in stunned silence. Then Mrs. Igwe smiled and pulled her into a warm hug. And right there, Mr. Igwe told Chidima, you are smart, and with what I can see, you are going so far. Then he turned to her mother and said gently, we will take care of your daughter's education all the way to the university. That's our promise to you and to God. Mrs. Peace wept. She held Chidima's hand and kissed it. You are no longer just my child, she whispered. You are now their daughter too. From that day, Mrs. Peace wasn't just a charity case. She became a family. Hey, Africantales by Kamma tribe, how are you all doing? For me, I am doing just fine. There are stories that entertain, and there are stories that awaken us. This is one of those stories. It reminds us that kindness doesn't always wear a uniform or speak with a title. Sometimes it comes through the pure heart of a child. Too often, we walk past people who are silently drowning. We assume that if they are not shouting, that they must be fine. But silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it means suffering with dignity. Let the story challenge us. When last did you notice someone's pain and do something about it? When last did you give without expecting anything back? And when last did you let your children teach you something about humanity? Mrs. Peace didn't beg. She didn't steal. She simply prayed and waited, and God sent help. Not through a senator, not through a pastor, but through a little girl who couldn't bear to eat while others starved. True worth is not in how much food on your table, but how many people you are willing to share it with. So I challenge you today. If you can bless someone, please bless them. If you can lift someone, go ahead and lift them. If your child shows compassion, don't shut it down. Kindly support it. Let me conclude by saying that sometimes the miracles people are praying for are locked inside your hands. So please don't fold it. Reach out to them, and the good Lord will bless you. On this note, I sign out from today's story. Kindly give it a thumbs up and share out to your loved ones. If you have not subscribed, you know what to do. And until I bring another exciting story your way, it's a goodbye from here, and God bless you.